really sorry. I have not done a video in like 3 weeks now. Yeah, that cold, it kind of developed into a chest infection, and yeah, I was ill for about a week, and I couldn't really talk properly because I was croaky, so I definitely couldn't do a video. And then we've had some major changes in work, and it's just been really busy. So yeah, when I'm getting a bit of free time, I've just been spending it with the family and yeah, chilling out a little bit. But I'd just like to say thank you for everybody who voted in the poll. We did get a clear winner, and today's video is going to be 42 facts about the Vikings. I will do another one for the next video, so I'll let you vote on what the next topic might be. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, 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 and I'll jump in, starting at fact 42. That's no merchant. The first recorded Viking raid on England was written about in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle in 789 AD. A group of Norsemen landed on the Isle of Portland in Dorset. A royal official situated there mistook them for merchants, and he asked them to pay taxes on their goods. Instead, the Vikings murdered the man. This was before the English knew what to expect from the Vikings, and yeah, I'm sure they'd definitely find out soon enough. Fact number 41. The law of the Danes. Dane law refers to the regions of England that were forced to follow the laws that the Vikings implemented. After their invasion, originally the term referred only to Viking law itself, but eventually the Dane law became a geographic term that referred to those parts of England that the Vikings controlled. Specifically, much of central of what is now England and the eastern coast, including modern-day Leicester, York, Cambridge and Buckingham. Number 40. Treasure hunters. One side effect of the Viking Age was that various treasure hoards were buried in England during the time period. Some of these hoards were hidden by the English in an attempt to hide their riches from the invaders. And when we say the English, it wasn't modern day England. England was divided into different kingdoms, and it wasn't actually England then. But we'll just say English on a whole. While others were created by the Vikings themselves to protect the treasure that they looted from the country. One of these hoards was discovered in 1862, and it contained a vast store of silver in the form of coins, ingots and hack silver. Number 39. Be prepared. Pacifism wasn't exactly an option in the Norse world. Viking custom required all free men to own weapons, and they were allowed to be fully armed at all times. The quality of one's gear would reflect their social standing. A wealthy man would be fully decked out with a helmet, shield, chainmail, and a sword. While I'm sure they look nice, these swords weren't actually used in battle very frequently, with spears being much more common when it came to actual fighting. I'm sorry if it's a little bit loud as well because I am recording in the day. It's about 2:30. Well, lucky the kids have been quiet at the minute. I know the baby's asleep and oldest is doing a bit of colouring, I think, so hopefully it'll keep him entertained for a little bit. Fact number 38. I'm sailing away. One of the most enduring images in our imaginations of Vikings is of their funerals, where a body would be put on a boat that would be set on fire and pushed out to sea. Unlike many myths about Vikings, this one is at least partially true, but it was reserved for the extremely wealthy. In some cases, the boats were pushed out to sea and burned, and in others, the Viking was placed in the ship, and the whole thing would be buried along with personal possessions, and even sacrificed thralls. So at least something we knew about the Vikings was actually right. Number 37. Sports. Among the many sports that the Vikings played, one game called Knattleik, I don't know if I pronounced that right, was apparently played with a ball and sticks, and has been speculated to have been similar to hockey. Number 36. Knut Job. Knut the Great was one of the most powerful Viking kings. Originally from Denmark, he eventually ruled over Norway and England as well, creating what is often referred to as the North Sea Empire. He was known for his brutal methods, and while he dominated Scandinavia and the British Isles for a time, his legacy was almost completely erased within a few decades of his death, in large part because of the Norman conquest of England in 1066. Number 35. Be a good sport. To no one's surprise, the Vikings were big into a lot of different sports, but their activities looked a little different from today's athletics. Some of the preferred Viking pastimes: wrestling, fist fighting, stone lifting, knife throwing, horse fighting, and mountain climbing. Fact number 34. It's called fashion. We think of the Vikings as brutal, dirty men who spent all of their time raiding and pillaging, but there was a lot more to Viking culture than that. In fact, Viking nobles were quite the dandies. They would show off their wealth with silk clothes and fancy jewellery, and kept themselves well groomed with nice haircuts. These principles of fashion and hygiene were passed down to the regular folk as well, though they generally went about it in a more relaxed way. Number 33. Free love man. The Viking rules of family and coupling were much less strict than in most societies. Women were free to live and sleep with a man without marrying him. In fact, she was still allowed to do it if the man was married to someone else. There was also no concept of legitimate or illegitimate children, whether born in or out of marriage. Child had the right to inherit their parents' property. They were basically 2 steps away from a hippie commune. Number 32. Written in stone. The writing remains on paper, there are thousands of large stones covered in runes that dot the Scandinavian landscape. These rune stones were usually created to memorialize the dead, although they weren't necessarily placed above graves like modern tombstones. But sometimes they would tell stories of warfare, such as Kujula runestone in Sweden. Number 31. A long way from home. The Byzantine Empire in modern-day Turkey had an imperial bodyguard called the Varangian Guard, which was mostly made up of Vikings. The Norsemen sent missionaries to Byzantium in the Near East as far back as the 9th century. Sorry, I could not get my words out then. And eventually worked for the empire as mercenaries. Then in the Imperial Guard, one member of the Varangian Guard named Harold Hadrada ended up making it back to his home in the north to become the King of Norway. Fact number 30. A Viking by any other name. The culture we call the Vikings was known by many names, by many different people. The Irish called them Dubgale and Fingale, dark and fair foreigners. The Germans called them Askomane, Ashmen. The Gaels knew them as Lochlanak, lake people, while the Arabs, Byzantines and Slavs named them the Rus. Number 29. To Valhalla. The religion practiced by the Vikings is known as Norse paganism. In Old Norse mythology, the Aesir are the principal gods of the pantheon, including fan favourites Odin and Thor. The Vikings were fierce warriors, and part of that was backed right into this religion. I don't know why I said back then. They believed if they died in battle, they might be selected to join Odin in the majestic halls of Valhalla, to wait and prepare to join Odin for the events of Ragnarok. Number 28. Clean freaks. Usually when we think of Vikings, we think of big, unkempt men with long beards. However, Vikings were actually very hygienic people, especially for the time period in which they lived. Tweezers, razors, combs and even ear cleaners made from animal bones and antlers have all been found in Viking excavation sites. Number 27. Odd pets. Some Vikings enjoyed keeping pets, including cats, dogs, falcons, peacocks, and even bears. It's definitely a no from the bear. Won't like a bear in my house. Bear cubs would be trapped and then raised by Viking families. Brown bears were widely kept as pets, but polar bears were considered to be for noblemen only. And if a bear got loose or injured a person, the owner could face stiff fines and penalties. Eventually this practice was outlawed because the bears became a nuisance. Well, I bet a nuisance is one word for it. Fact number 26. Women's rights. It's no great secret that women got the short end of the stick many historical cultures, but Viking women actually had a lot more rights than most women in the world at the time. Women in Viking society had the right to divorce their husbands and could own and inherit property, something women in other cultures could only dream of. Number 25, slavers. Vikings were very active in the slave trade. They would capture and enslave both women and men while raiding Anglo-Saxon, Celtic and Slavic areas. These thralls, as they were called, were then sold across Europe and the Middle East. I'm so sorry if you can hear them trucks going past. They're really loud. Number 24, not all killers. While most of us imagine that Vikings made their living raiding and plundering coastal villages, in reality, most of them were farmers. True, some were raiders, but they were just one small part of Norse society. The vast majority of Norsemen and women peacefully grew things like barley, rye or oats, and some raised animals. I really hope you can't hear them cars and lorries going past. I have turned the volume down on the microphone, so if it's a little bit quieter, that's why. I just didn't want any background noise to be picked up. Hopefully it's not too quiet when I finish the video. Number 23, Vikings on skis. Don't tell me they did skiing. Scandinavians invented simple skis at least 6,000 years ago, wow, and kept using them through the Viking Age. Norsemen saw skiing as an efficient way to get around, using their skis for hunting and travelling. I wonder if it was all business or if Vikings could appreciate shredding some epic pow now and again. Number 22, Viking. What's a Viking? Most of the people who call Vikings wouldn't have called themselves that. The term Viking is derived from the Norse word Vikingar, which means raider or pirate, and only refers to those Scandinavians who took part in pillaging voyages during the 8th to 11th centuries. I know most people when you say the word Viking to them, they're going to think hats with horns on, and yeah, a lot of it was just myth, it seems. Fact number 21, blondes have more fun. When people think of Scandinavians today, they most likely think of blonde hair. However, while blonde is common in the region, there are plenty of brunettes and redheads as well. Perhaps part of the reason we so associate blonde hair with Vikings is that many men with dark hair would use a strong soap to bleach it to a lighter shade, sometimes lightening their beards as well. This was partly a fashion statement. Even the Vikings weren't immune to vanity, but it also helped to combat lice. Number 20, the original explorers. Around 500 years before the Christopher Columbus set sail for the West, Vikings had already discovered the New World. Leif Erikson, the Viking who led the expedition, landed in what is now the Canadian province of Newfoundland and Labrador around the year 1000 AD. He named it Vinland, and while we don't know the full extent of their colonization, we do see evidence of Viking habitation. navigation at places like, I can't pronounce this, Leanne's Oaks Meadows. That's crazy. 500 years before Christopher Columbus, and yet in school I was taught Christopher Columbus found it. So yeah, seems like that's not true. 19. Gnarly. The Vikings were a seagoing people, and that wasn't by accident, since much of Scandinavia consists of inland mountain ranges, and since there is easy access to the sea in most areas, the Vikings did most of their travel and trade by boat. I felt like a rapper then doing that. Most of their travel and trade. Ships became an important part of their culture, often taking on religious and symbolic purposes. They had many different kinds of ships, and while most were made for use on rivers or near the coast, they also had ships called knar, which were built to withstand the open ocean and were used for settling Iceland, Greenland, and North America. Oh, I just moved my ankle and it cracked. Fact number 18. Long reign. The Vikings were most prominent in Europe during the period between 793 and 1066 AD. During this time they travelled throughout the continent, invading lands that stretched from Ireland to Russia to Turkey. This time was called the Viking Age, and it saw the spread of Norse culture, especially in the British Isles. Number 17. Green roof. Viking homes had sod roofs. Gently sloping roofs were covered in layers of birch bark and then covered in sod. This would help keep the heat in and apply pressure to the log walls, which helped make them keep the wind out. I really want to know what sod is. Okay, I just googled it. It's like a turf, so grass basically. Number 16. End of an age. No one is sure what ended the Viking culture, but it is believed that they were eventually converted to Christianity, which eventually led to the end of the Viking way of life. Number 15. Founding fathers. Vikings are credited with founding a number of European cities. The Irish cities of Dublin, Wexford, Waterford, Cork, and Limerick were all prominent Viking settlements. Numerous cities across England, specifically York, were also hugely impacted by the Vikings. I've actually been to York and it's really, really nice. There's like a Viking centre there. I've been on that as well. It's not what I was expecting, but it's like a little ride that goes round. If anybody else has been there, feel free to let me know. And let me know your thoughts on it. Number 14. Not exactly scholars. The reason we know so little about the specifics of what the Vikings did is that they mostly didn't bother to write it down. While they did leave some fragmented writing, mostly in the form of runestones, most of what we know about the Viking culture comes from things written by their enemies. Serious research on the Vikings did not begin until the 20th century. And I suppose you're only going to learn one side of the story if it's not from them. And yeah, if we're reading what their enemies have put, we're gonna, maybe that's where most of the myths and things come from. Number 13. Dietary restrictions. social standing. Vikings of a higher position in society regularly ate meat and seafood, where lower standing individuals were more likely to eat more vegetables, essentially living off their farms. Makes sense. If you've got the money, you get the better stuff, don't you? And meat was obviously a lot more expensive than the vegetables that the farmers grew. Number 12. Social structure. Nordic societies had four major social classes: kings, jarls, carls and thralls. The king was the landowner and ruler. A jarl was considered the highest nobleman of the king. They were given territories to rule over by their king. Carls made up most of the population. These were the free people, farmers, tradesmen and builders who could also own land if they were able. Finally, there were the thralls, or the slave class. Number 11. To Russia with love. The Vikings had a large influence on the organisation of Eastern Russia. Swedish Vikings, known as the Rus, travelled into Eastern Russia, which at the time was ruled by many warring Slavic tribes. A Rus chieftain named Rurik started conquering and unifying the tribes, setting up a kingdom in Novgorod. In the 9th century, his Rurik dynasty would go on to rule the Grand Duchy of Moscow and found the Tsardom of Russia. Fact number 10. Scrooge of God. Viking raids on Christian settlements were so brutal that many of the monks and priests who lived in them thought that the Vikings were sent from God to punish them for their sins, which is definitely understandable. Fact number 9. Bad parenting skills. Having Viking parents could be a real hazard to your health. Vikings would often cast their own children out if they deemed them too weak or sickly. That's horrible. Fact number 8. No horns about it. Despite what you've seen in the movies, Vikings did not actually wear horned helmets. This is what I was going back to before. The image of the horned helmet Viking is from an 1876 production of The Ring des Nibelungen, a German musical drama. Archaeologists have found one Viking helmet with horns, but it was ceremonial and was never used in battle. By all accounts, when Vikings charged into battle, they did so with no horn to be seen. Fact number 7. Wordsmiths. Some of the words we use today came from the Vikings. Words such as anger, hell, ugly, weak, skull and slaughter are all descended from Norse language. More unexpectedly, we can also thank the Vikings for the words cake, freckles, husband and wife. I think everybody loves a bit of cake, so well done, Vikings. All this talk about cake, I've been on a diet for the past month and I've lost last few months, I've lost about 2 stone. And talking about cake has just really made me fancy a chocolate cake. Well done, facts. Number 6. Board games. Vikings were fond of board games. A favourite was Hnefatafl, a strategy game like chess, played on a checkerboard. A checkered board using figurines representing two rival armies. Very cool. I'm just looking at the board there. It's not set up anything like chess. I mean, there's figurines on each side of the board and then like a group of figurines in the middle. Looks kind of weird. Fact number 5. Courts. Vikings had their own system of law and order. Men were obliged to attend meetings where all legal issues were resolved by the community leaders. These were major events in the Viking society and could go on for days. Number 4. Fire to go. Vikings often spent long voyages in unfamiliar territory, so they needed an effective way to create fires constantly, and their solution was rather interesting. They would collect a special fungus from trees, cut it into slices, and beat the slices so they had a felt-like texture. Makes sense so far. Then the slices were boiled in urine. Oh no, that's not good. The sodium nitrate in the urine would make the material which they called, do you know what? These words. Hanajuska, Frunjuska, smoulder for days rather than burn immediately, so the Vikings could take their fire with them on the go. That's actually quite ingenious. Like, who would have actually thought of that? Like, you thought, oh yeah, let's get these and let's burn them in some urine, and it'll put them in urine. Like, it don't make no sense. Who's been boiling urine to then put it in? Number 3. Can I ask you a question? Huskarls, sometimes written as housecarls, were elite bodyguards tasked with defending the Scandinavian kings. The Huskarls, for at least one such king, Canute the Great, King of Denmark, England and Norway, wielded enormous axes called Dane axes, which could easily split helmets and shields in two. Fact number 2. Vikings run berserk. If you ever feel like you just need to go berserk, well, you can. Thank the Vikings for that. Berserkers were partially scary Viking warriors who would go into battle in a trance-like state of fury. They were partially noted in Icelandic histories and were said to wear bear or wolf skins into battle instead of armour. And if I'm correct as well with that, they used to take a kind of drink which was made out of mushrooms. I'm not 100% sure on that, so don't hold me to it. And this is the final one, number 1. What a way to make an entrance. The event that solidified the Vikings' status as villains in England culture took place in June of 793 AD, when raiders arrived on the island of Lindisfarne off the England's northeast coast and brutally destroyed the abbey situated there. One English scholar from the time period named Alcuin of York wrote, "Never before has such an atrocity been seen, and the Vikings were just getting started." Right, really hope you enjoyed that video. Sorry it's been so long since my last one. I'm going to definitely do another one in this upcoming week for you. It'll be rather Wednesday or Thursday so you can have your say on what the next video is going to be about. And I am looking on doing that documentary style video, but I'm just trying to learn out how I would actually use the software to do that, and I don't think it's going to be anytime soon, but yeah, it's definitely on the list to do. And yeah, thank you all, you're all amazing, thank you to all the subscribers, and I'll see you all